C'est l'événement dans Rothen sans flamme puisqu'on est avec, pour la première fois sur RMC, le propriétaire de l'Olympique Lyonnais, l'Américain John Textor est dans Rothen sans flamme, Jérôme.
C'est un grand plaisir de vous recevoir. Merci, John.
Bonjour, merci.
Bonjour. Alors John, il y a beaucoup de choses qui se passent actuellement. On va revenir sur plein de choses sur l'Olympique Lyonnais, mais déjà l'actualité, Jean-Louis en parlait, cette confirmation de la DNCG, donc des sanctions.
Les sanctions, rappelle, c'est relégation à la fin de saison en Ligue 2 et interdiction de recrutement pour l'instant. Il y aura un nouveau passage en fin de saison devant la DNCG pour peut-être éviter ça.
Exactement. Comment vous réagissez à ça, John?
That's not correct. Yesterday was not about the relegation. Yesterday was an appeal specifically about the transfer ban. We talked, obviously, about the inappropriateness of a forward warning of relegation. It's preposterous. But nobody at the Appeal Commission had any audience for that yesterday. It wasn't a topic to be discussed. Regarding the transfer ban, nobody expected them to overturn the original decision. I'm not sure if there's even a history of the appeals group overturning a prior decision. But I did really enjoy the opportunity to further explain the benefits of the multi-club model. I don't think the first DNCG panel even considered kind of the large inflows of cash that we get from other parts of our organization. We have an amount of capital and support for our club that's maybe unlike any other club in France. And I was very excited that the panel on the commission yesterday was very curious about it. I think they were pretty pleased with the progress we've made. We've put in 60 million euros in cash in the last week. We're going to put another 25 million euros in cash in next week. Our player sales of players that we already wanted to sell are going extremely well. So no chance of this relegation idea. It's nonsense. I think it's inappropriate as a warning. I think so many other clubs are truly suffering under the new television regime, and not one of them got a warning, just us. So you can judge for yourself why that might have happened, but it's not going to happen.
On va pas se cacher, on se dit la vérité ici dans l'émission. On vous a beaucoup critiqué, que ce soit nous dans l'émission ou même ailleurs, parce qu'on vous comprend pas. Le modèle, vos envies, vos ambitions, la multipropriété. Est-ce que vous êtes un génie ou qu'on comprend pas, ou est-ce que vous êtes un danger comme ça s'est passé à Bordeaux, par exemple?
I'm probably neither a genius nor a danger. I think it's comical to say, oh, he's American, so maybe he's Joe DeGrossa. I mean, come on, that's a joke, right? I mean, it's a joke.
Mm-hmm.
He's American, I'm American.
Non, c'est parce que on a été traumatisé par ce qui s'est passé à Bordeaux qu'on pose la question comme ça. Et comme les sanctions à la DNCG continuent d'être là, beaucoup ont envie de vous suivre, mais beaucoup ont peur également de ce qui pourrait arriver si l'argent n'arrivait pas.
Look, we have plenty of time to talk about that. I'm merely saying that since the day I got here, I was compared to Joe DeGrossa, another American from Florida. I met him twice. Right, so just stop talking about Bordeaux. I have no idea. Bordeaux was probably insolvent for 2 years before they were relegated. And I don't even think they were relegated by administrative action. I think they were relegated competitively. Is that the case?
Oui, bien sûr.
John, expliquez-nous votre projet à Lyon, vos idées, vos ambitions.
Well, I mean, and I will,
Okay.
But to be clear, what the DNCG did is say, okay, you're a big club. You lose a lot of money every year. We do.
Mm-hmm.
When Olympique Lyon starts the year, its plan is to lose money, and its plan is to compensate for the loss of that money through sales out of the academy, sales out of the team. That's how the club has survived for many years.
Et ça, c'était le cas même avant vous.
Of course. It's a big, bloated club with huge expenses, and it has not been playing consistently in Champions League for many years. At the time I showed up in November 2022, actually a few months before that, the club needed an 86 million euro injection from me. Otherwise, it was insolvent. And so there was no warning from the DNCG that if Jean-Michel didn't get the money, he was going to be relegated. There was no auditor that said, I refuse to certify your financials. But if I didn't close and put in the 86 million, and if I didn't pay off the lenders 50 million euros, what would have happened? Would have Lyon have been relegated then? So I do think the treatment of, me coming into this market has been very, very different. Jean-Michel has been able to just make promises that everything will be okay. I'm not able to be trusted with those promises.
On a bien compris. Vous passez après Jean-Michel Aulas, monument du foot français, donc c'est difficile. Est-ce que vous pensez aussi qu'en France, on ne comprend pas votre modèle, la multipropriété, et est-ce que vous estimez que c'est de l'avenir du foot pour les prochaines années?
Well, I think it's one method of competition. I think we're all challenged. If we want to win championships in Europe, every league is dominated by a force of a team, whether it's in Germany or a couple of teams in the Premier League or in other leagues. There's always one dominant team with seemingly unlimited money. In some cases, money from oil states. And unless we all just want to sit at the bottom looking up at the glory on the mountaintop that somebody else enjoys, we have to consider alternative forms of competition. And I'll tell you, I hope today will help the people understand more of a multi-club model. I think it's obscene that the DNCG does not give us credit for the multi-club model because our cash that comes from different sources is legal under European law. PSG's cash that comes from a foreign state illegally subsidizing a private business in distortion of competition, that's not legal. So the league and the DNCG are aiding and abetting the violation of European law so PSG can kick our ass every year. But when I show up with money from a different business model, they won't consider it.
John Textor, invité exceptionnel de Rothen sans flamme sur RMC, le propriétaire de l'Olympique Lyonnais. On va parler sportif un moment,
Oui.
bien sûr, mais c'est bien de profiter de la vision de John.
C'est déjà la première fois que John Textor vient sur RMC. On vous remercie encore. Avant de parler de Botafogo, moi je voudrais juste rebondir sur votre dernière réponse. Quand vous nous parlez du Paris Saint-Germain, des équipes qui dominent comme ça, est-ce que c'est pas une surprise pour vous? Quand vous achetez l'Olympique Lyonnais, vous savez que ça fonctionne comme ça dans le championnat de France. Pourquoi aujourd'hui essayer, après avoir acheté l'Olympique Lyonnais, essayer de tout remettre en question?
Well, I was aware about this, but I wasn't aware of the protection that comes institutionally. I was not really focused on the dominance of this one man on the European Club Association, on the executive committee of UEFA. I was completely shocked in July to be in a meeting of the presidents to discuss viable alternatives on television. And the president of the league, who should have been running the meeting, barely opened his mouth. And Nasser sat there and ran the meeting and should not have been in the meeting because he was a proponent of his own television network taking over the television for the league. And every time anybody would raise an alternate idea in friendly fashion, in civil fashion, Nasser would bark at them and intimidate and bully. And the president of our league just sat there like a lapdog, didn't say anything. So, no, I wasn't aware that the league was so incredibly dominated by this man. I was not aware. I think the influence across, from PSG to the league to even the DNCG, I think needs to be looked at. I know that's going to inflame the very powerful head of the DNCG, but I do think there's a perception of impropriety that means the DNCG needs to be incredibly careful to stay clear of the league. I don't think the DNCG should even be managed by the league, owned by the league. Their email address is at the league. and they claim that it's a confidential process, but we hadn't even finished our presentation this year. It was a 2-hour presentation going over a lot of detail, showing money come in from other sources. And when we started at 11 a.m. and went for 2 hours, it was 12 noon when journalists were receiving notes coming from the meeting saying they're going to be relegated. So they say there are no leaks at the DNCG, but we hadn't even finished our 2-hour presentation, and halfway through it, club presidents that are part of the board of the league were texting journalists. They knew in advance we were going to get relegated. So you can't tell me that there's not coordination and communication between the league, some of the people that wish OL to be punished, and the DNCG. And when I brought it up in the meeting with the DNCG, I was scolded by the chairman of the DNCG and told I can't talk about it. Well, I think everybody knows I'm not afraid to talk about things.
Yes. Juste pour être clair et qu'on vous comprenne bien, vous dites que derrière les sanctions de la DNCG, il y a Nasser Al-Khelaïfi?
You know, I wouldn't dream of saying anything so preposterous without evidence. I merely come to you now saying their decision was made before we walked in the door. And we have a very complicated financial picture. We showed a slide to the DNCG that day that showed that our salaries are being reduced very quickly, that across this year, we'll reduce our wages by 50 million euros. By the end of the year, we're going to be very profitable as a club. We're not Bordeaux. We're not Montpellier. We're on a path to profitability while at the same time we're competing very well. And so how is it that before we even make the presentation of those financials, that it had already been decided that we need financial oversight and intervention, and somebody needs to protect OL from its own idiocy, and we've got to threaten them with relegation so they'll change their ways? Well, we're putting cash into the club that other clubs can't put in. We've got assets that we can leverage to continue to support the club, and we're profitable through the contractual roll-off of high wages by the end of the year. So why are we threatened with relegation, and why is that decision made before we walked in the door and leaked to journalists before we came out the door?
Déjà, merci John de nous expliquer tout ça, parce qu'on ne l'a jamais entendu et on découvre, et c'est bien de nous apporter des précisions là-dessus. Moi, je suis assez proche, je ne me cache pas, de Nasser Al-Khelaïfi, j'apprécie la personne, mais ce que vous venez de nous dire, en effet, ce n'est pas normal. Mais moi, ce qui m'interpelle le plus, et je ne sais pas quelle est votre vision là-dessus, c'est pour ça que je vous pose la question, c'est qu'est-ce que font tous les autres présidents?
Oui, parce que vous êtes le seul à vous opposer à Nasser Al-Khelaïfi.
I don't oppose him personally. The time I spent with him as I arrived here, I enjoyed. It's not a personal issue. I think it's not true that I'm the only one in club presidents that's concerned about it. There are 2 or 3 clubs that voiced concerns on that call. There are 6 or 7 other clubs that are afraid to voice concerns on that call. And, you know, I can't tell you why they're not more vocal about it. I asked Nasser when I met with him face-to-face many times, who is going to care about the French league if there is no competition? And I honestly don't think he has a concern about parity of competition, about balance. I don't think it interests him. So it's not personal. I think this lack of competition will destroy this league.
Alors, on a compris, c'est pas un conflit de personnes. La base d'ailleurs de votre divergence de point de vue, c'est sur l'avenir du football français, donc on va y revenir. Mais dernière question là-dessus, sur Nasser Al-Khelaïfi, est-ce que ce qui s'est passé lors de cette crise des droits télé, votre dispute, vous avez publié l'échange de SMS d'ailleurs quand il dit que vous n'allez jamais rien gagner dans votre carrière, est-ce que tout ça a des conséquences sur la vie de l'Olympique lyonnais? Est-ce que par exemple, on peut imaginer un transfert de Lyon au PSG? Ou est-ce que ça c'est fini? Ou est-ce que c'est compliqué aussi de faire des transferts avec des présidents proches de Nasser Al-Khelaïfi en Ligue 1?
Well, I don't think OL should be in the business of trading players with PSG. That's really not a model for successful competition. It doesn't work well in other leagues. trading with your biggest competitor. So that's not part of our business plan anyway.
Oui, mais vous avez vendu Barcola au PSG quand même à un moment.
Barcola was, look, I showed up and there were 3 kids in the academy in particular that wanted out, that had an opinion of OL. They met with me. They were nice boys, but they said, I think we've given enough to our training club. They referred to OL as their training club. I thought that was nonsense. I politely said, look, I want players to play here that see this club as their championship club, not their training club. So I wanted to see the players that grew up in our academy dreaming of playing for PSG. I want them gone. I want players like growing up and dreaming that they can be Juninho, that they can be Fekir, that they can be Benzema. So yeah, I had no trouble taking 45 million euros from the lovely guy in Paris to get rid of a young man that didn't want to be there. I want to build a championship team. So that was different. But I don't think it should be our business model to take our best players and send them to our greatest competition. That's idiotic. So I want to make one thing clear, because I've seen Nasser many times say, oh, I help everybody in the league. Like, Nasser's like that really good-looking kid in your school class who's better looking than everybody, has nicer clothes, he has a nicer car, and honestly, maybe the world does revolve around him, right? But he thinks he's helping us when he buys our players. He thinks he's helping the small clubs because he has the money, and I'll take this player. You know, he made a comment that he helped me. I was asking for the acceleration based on the playing time of Barcola because we have a $5 million bonus coming. He sort of says it in a letter, that I asked him for help. No, we're negotiating, the terms of a player movement. He's not helping me. I'm helping him with a player. He's helping me with a transfer. We're helping each other. So, but this idea that you have this one rich club that lets the crumbs fall off the table for the rest of us, and he sees that as helping the league. I mean, that's just demented. It's just, I would challenge Nasser to follow European law, right? Don't fund your club with the unlimited sources of a foreign state, when the rest of us follow the law in Europe and have to compete with our own capital. So if he wants to put in his own personal money, if he wants to put in the money of Arctos, the fund that owns 20% of PSG, and he wants to compete with Monaco, with Marseille, with Nice, with Lyon, if he wants to compete in compliance with the law, that would be healthy for all of France, because there'd be a bunch of people suddenly beating PSG. So I'm not sure why you guys are okay with this. With all due respect, it's a violation of law. So I would invite him to compete in compliance with the law, and we'll see how many times PSG sits on top of the league. And then maybe people outside of France will start paying attention to Ligue 1.
John, donc en résumé, et nous on le dit très souvent, c'est pour ça qu'on fait cette émission tous les jours, de 18h à 20h, on est très critique sur le foot, sur le niveau du foot, sur le spectacle, on ne voit pas les matchs ou très peu, du moins. C'est quoi vos idées pour sauver le foot français? Maintenant, vous commencez à avoir une expérience dans le football. Ça fait à peu près 4 ans maintenant que vous êtes arrivé propriétaire de Botafogo, de Molenbeek en Angleterre et maintenant à Lyon. Vous avez gagné dernièrement et on vous félicite avec Botafogo. Donc, c'est quoi? Est-ce que vous avez des idées précises pour sauver le foot français?
Well, I've been around for 2 years in France, and there's a lot. I'm relatively quiet about French football. I don't get very involved in the politics. I don't have relationships with other presidents. I'm taking my time. I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to watch. I do find it overly political. There's a lot that happens off the pitch that I don't find enjoyable and relevant. Honestly, I can share with you some ideas, but I'm still trying to learn. I haven't been here that long. So I'll talk about some kind of basic business ideas that might be applicable here. Eagle football operates on the idea that the audience of the club, the community of the club, is far more valuable than the club. And I mean that spiritually and economically. Now, I know certain of the supporters of Lyon don't like to hear me talk about Botafogo. I don't talk about it just because I love the club. I talk about it because I think it's an example of what I would like to build here in France. It's an extreme connection between club and community. We've increased our revenues from 20 million US dollars to 120 million US dollars in only 2.5 years. That's a 6-fold increase in revenues without any player sales. So that's because we used new membership models. We went to free ticketing instead of charging high prices for tickets. We invite people to become members. Depending on how much you pay, whether it's next to nothing or it's a higher number, you have preferred access to seats, preferred access to concerts. But we make sure, because we drop the base ticket price down next to zero, we make sure that we now fill our stadium, because our product is what we convey out to the rest of the world. I have an Olympic scale stadium that was empty when I arrived. If my product is global content or television, nobody's going to believe our team is any good if they're playing in front of an empty stadium. It's going to look horrible on TV. So with a view to extending our brand beyond Brazil into a global brand, we dropped ticket prices to nothing. We filled the stadium. Now our revenues are 6 times higher. We are getting more for the shirt. We're getting more for the sleeve. We're getting more for the television. We're getting more for the advertisements.
Et ces idées sont transposables en France?
Well, if they'll let me run my business model the way I'd like, in the United States, nobody tells you how to run your business. In France, it's a panel of 18 people in the DNCG that have been appointed and have a lot to say about your business model, and what they use words like, well, when we trust you, we'll start letting you run your business. So I would say that's an eye opener. But yes, I think, Lyon, I think there's an audience that comes to every game. There's a big community beyond those that come to the game. I mean, Lyon is a big and diverse community. I'd like to see more faces in the community of Lyon engaged with the club. The club is, of course, supported by so many people around Lyon and so many people around France, but I don't think we're doing a great job of engaging with the total audience of people that care about our club. So we have to do that better in Lyon the way we do it in Brazil. When I arrived here, even our fans knew that I come from a world of human animation. I had a career in building some of the most dynamic digital humans in entertainment history and maybe in other applications. And so the fans held a banner up that said, Textor, no facial recognition. Well, I'm not in the world of facial recognition. What we have down in Brazil is the voluntary use of one's face as the key to membership. So every one of our members, their face is scanned to become a member. Their face is their ticket to get into the stadium. They walk up to the kiosk and they're scanned. And quite soon, their face is going to be the way they're able to run up, grab a Coca-Cola or a beer or a hot dog at lightning speed without pulling out their credit card and doing a financial transaction and getting back to their seat and enjoying the game. Their face is also, because we can get a full map of their face, not just 5-point facial recognition. We can carry their digital likeness into their video games and their social media, their volumetric apps. This is the selfie generation, right? We all love Instagram. Everybody loves their face all of a sudden. The real version of their face, the fake version of their face. And so we're engaging with our fans in some very unique ways. The people of Brazil, they love trying all this stuff. And, people in my stadium held a banner saying, don't bring that here. So I need to teach our fans that some of these technologies are really fun, really useful. They also keep people safe. You don't typically commit a felony and beat up somebody or chant racist slogans or Nazi slogans, when you scanned your face to get into the stadium. So I don't know what of these ideas are good for France, but some of these applications are really enjoyable for the audience, and they also massively increase revenues for the clubs.
Juste avant de passer à la saison de l'OL aux sportifs, je pense aux supporters lyonnais qui nous écoutent, qui veulent parler mercato notamment, enfin avoir des infos sur le mercato. Finissons juste sur comment améliorer le produit en France. Je sais, on a discuté avant l'interview, ça vous tient à cœur. Selon vous, il faudrait davantage communiquer sur la France à l'étranger, plus que sur le football français, c'est ça? Ce qui pourrait aider à mieux vendre le produit Ligue 1?
Yeah, I brought this up a few times when I first arrived because we have to understand our product is what the rest of the world sees. We've already mastered the economics of the stadium. We have matches, they occur in the stadium. The revenues come from ticket sales and merchandise sales. But that's the easy part. The trick is making sure that people on the other side of the globe care about French football. So why should they care about it? Number one, it has to be competitive. Like, people really have to see that every year is a battle. And it could be a number of really strong teams at the top of the league that works pretty well in the Premier League, but it's just got to be more than one, right? So we have to fix that, number one. People have to care about the competition. Secondly, you have to understand that content is all about storytelling. We're you in radio, the people here in this building in TV. I mean, you have to sort of tell a story in a way that people are going to connect with it and care about it. And if the way you broadcast football, and I don't mean to attack beIN Sports again, but it's just that that's how I watch French football in the United States. It is, there's no production quality. The game comes on. Oftentimes, if I turn on the Olympique Lyonnais game, even though beIN Sports has 6 or 7 channels there, well, they're not being used to carry multiple games. And if the game before our game has gone long, sometimes I join the OL game 6 minutes into it. I remember last year when PSG beat us. I think Barcola had a great moment. Before our game even came on, I think we were down 2-0, right? And so many times, not just beIN Sports, but Paramount Plus, all of these streamers that are coming in, they're making production decisions based on, computer sequencing. There's not even a person in the control room making a decision as to when the game comes on, when you cut to a commercial. The commercials are amazing on streaming. They actually, at beIN Sports in the United States, they interrupt the broadcast of the game while the guy is running down the sideline. Maybe he's going to score a goal or get fouled. And it's a computer, I think, making that decision, because if it were a human, it says, "Well, be right back." And it goes away to a commercial break in the middle of a football match. You've never seen such a thing. You wouldn't stand for it in Europe. But when they broadcast it in the United States, they literally interrupt the game. The guy could be standing on the penalty spot about to kick a free kick, and the computer's already decided we're going to go away for a commercial break. And then when you get to the commercial break and you're watching your Lyon game, it's advertising your competitor. The championship campaign of PSG, come watch it now at beIN Sports. And 3/4 of the ads are not even paid ads from advertisers. It's advertising beIN Sports with the greatest brand and our beautiful Eiffel Tower on the shirt of PSG. And so, but it's not just beIN Sports. If it may be Paramount Plus or Apple, it's, if you're watching that game and it's just one person doing the sound, sitting in a sound booth, well, he's not at the game. They don't even put the money into it to have a second person doing commentary, guys talking back and forth about the game, about themselves, about life, about whatever. And so you get this feeling that you just have this camera on this rectangular pitch, and there's some guy in a sound booth who has no energy, has nobody to talk to. And so the production value of that is horrible. So whoever gets the rights to broadcast French games out to the rest of the world, the league should put standards in place on production value. Secondly, story. Everything's about story. Why should I care about this game? Tell me about the people of Le Havre. Where is it? Is it up near Normandy? Is the weather good? Are the girls hot? Like, who's this new team in Paris? I hear some rich guy just bought Paris FC and he's going to go after PSG. Like, I want to know about that. I want to know about the guy. Does he get along with the other guy? Does he have a hot wife? I want to know about the guy that owned Rennes. He's married to Selma Hayek. My God, Jesus, right? So tell me about the town. Tell me about the people. Tell me about the players. The reason the NBA is so good is that they've connected sport with culture, with clothing, with music, and it's a vibe, right? And so that product, as we push it out to the world, needs to be as sexy as we know France to be. Everybody loves France, right? You guys make fun of the Americans who come here fat with our shorts, with our crazy colors, and we buy all your products, and you smile at us, and then you laugh at us behind our backs as we get back on the plane and we go home. But like, we love France. That's why your tourism is so good. Well, why aren't we projecting France out through the television, through the radio? Why aren't we telling the story? Our product on television right now of the league globally, it sucks. It sucks. Why does anybody care about it? We're getting no revenue from it. So produce it the way you want to see stories produced, and maybe people are going to watch.
John Textor sur RMC dans Rothen sans flamme. C'est passionnant de vous entendre. Et Jérôme, on va parler de la saison de l'OL.
Non, mais c'est passionnant, John, de nous éclaircir. Alors après, on est d'accord, on n'est pas d'accord avec vous, mais n'empêche qu'on apprend à vous connaître et ça, c'est intéressant. Maintenant, oui, ce qui nous intéresse le plus, c'est l'Olympique Lyonnais, c'est le sportif. Donc, c'est quoi les ambitions de l'Olympique Lyonnais, en fait, jusqu'à la fin de l'année? Parce qu'à vous entendre, alors je ne veux pas vous tirer les verres du nez, mais à vous entendre, en fait, une qualification en Ligue des Champions vous ferait énormément de bien financièrement, mais si ce n'est pas le cas, peut-être que ça va être difficile derrière.
We demonstrated to the DNCG, and I also did, surprisingly, I think that's the first time a president's maybe given his DNCG presentation to the public on YouTube. So I would ask people to take a look at that. Based on our current level of revenues, even lower as they are because of the reduced television, if you take the new lower revenues of our club and you consider the same level of player sales that we have every year on average for the last several years, with our lower wage scale, which comes down 50 million euros by the rolling off of contracts by the end of the year, we're a very profitable club. So we don't need Champions League to get back to profitability. That's the big improvement at Olympique Lyon. We have rationalized the expenses of a very big club to be able to survive financially if we're not in Champions League. Now, in terms of sporting, we have to get to Champions League. Our community wants to be there. I want to be there. And even with the transfer ban, we were not bringing in significant players anyway. The transfer ban doesn't really affect us in January. We have too many players. We have guys like Wilfried Zaha that can't even get on the pitch, and I think he deserves to be on the pitch. So, no, I think also our multi-club benefits. We had 3 players that were transferred to OL before we knew about the transfer ban. So we have Thiago Almada, we have Luis Henrique, who might come to Lyon, Igor Jesus, we could bring him to Lyon, starting striker for Brazil, but I think he's probably going to go to the Premier League. So, but Thiago shows up this week. Luis Henrique shows up this week. Some possibility he plays for Lyon, some possibility he moves to the Premier League. But we have the ability to strengthen this team and make a push for Champions League, even with this transfer ban.
Là, on a l'impression que tout le monde est à vendre. Est-ce que Cherki, Fofana, qui sont les 2 valeurs marchandes importantes de l'Olympique Lyonnais aujourd'hui, vont finir la saison pour aider Lyon à finir dans les 4 premiers?
Guys, can I tell you something? This is bullshit. Like, you're not paying attention to the numbers I put out. Like, I got on YouTube for 2 hours and I laid out our finances as we showed them the DNCG. What you guys are doing is taking the headlines that we're in trouble and saying, well, everybody's for sale. Well, who the hell said everybody's for sale? You guys did, not you specifically, the press. I said then, our plan is to sell the players now that we planned to sell before the DNCG announcement. When you say everybody's for sale, let me tell you how football clubs work. When a club decides that it wants to sell certain players, it advances certain players into the marketplace because it needs to move them off the roster. At the same time, it gets unsolicited calls from other clubs that say, hey, I want to buy a different player that you didn't think of selling. And you think, well, I hadn't considered that. Maybe I would sell him. Well, I'm only interested in selling players that we had planned to move anyway. And I'm only interested in selling players if I have a better player that can come in behind them. That hasn't changed just because of this bullshit with the DNCG. So I've read it everywhere that the whole team's for sale. I have clubs from Turkey showing up offering me piss money for great players because they think we're desperate. And this is radio. I hope I can talk bluntly, but we tell them to fuck off. So it's not happening. This image that the whole place is for sale, it's not happening.
Donc Cherki et Fofana finiront la saison.
Eh oui.
Cherki has wanted to leave for a couple of years, so don't bring up Cherki. It has nothing to do with the DNCG. He literally went to PSG last year and sent me text messages and said, I really want to go to PSG.
Oui, mais sauf que,
Right?
John, Cherki, je vous coupe, je suis désolé, mais Cherki, c'est la première fois, là, depuis 2-3 mois, qu'il explose comme ça et qu'il est régulier et qu'il fait gagner l'équipe. Peut-être que même lui, il se dit, je veux finir la saison maintenant.
You'd have to ask him, wouldn't you? But look, Ryan, I love Ryan. I told him he couldn't play for us, he couldn't train with us unless he signed a longer-term contract. He has that longer-term contract because I forced him out of the squad. So he comes back into the squad, suddenly he starts playing great. I see him in the locker room, I joke with him, I say, look how well you play with a contract, right? So yeah, I hope he wants to stay. But nobody's pushing him out because of the DNCG, right? He's the one who wanted to leave. Ultimately, he agreed to sign a longer contract. He's playing better. It's fabulous. That's football. In terms of Fofana, I don't know, where does the story of Fofana come from? Nobody's called me about Fofana, and I haven't called anybody about Fofana, but, the whole team is not for sale. Well, the problem is we have 29 players, and we need 24. These guys have to eat. Top players are not happy unless they're getting good playing time. Max Cacré, right? Terrific player.
John, si Nasser,
had to sell him.
si Nasser veut vous acheter Cherki ou Fofana, vous êtes d'accord?
Today? No.
No.
No. Definitely not. Definitely not.
Parce qu'ils sont pas en vente.
Because I would never sell a player of that quality to Nasser until he and I have a beer and shake hands and decide to help the French league. So, obviously my relationship with Nasser is not where it was, but, guys are guys. They can have a drink and get over it. But no, right now I wouldn't sell anybody to him.
Et alors, où en êtes-vous avec Jean-Michel Aulas? Parce qu'on a écouté son interview aux médias carrés il y a quelques jours, donc il est toujours président d'honneur. Alors, il dit qu'il regrette d'avoir vendu Lyon parce qu'il a été plus ou moins contraint et forcé. Il parle de vous en disant déjà que ce n'était pas votre dossier, sa priorité s'il avait dû choisir, mais il n'était pas seul décideur. Mais il dit de vous, vous n'avez pas le comportement d'un chef d'entreprise, mais vous avez quand même des idées de génie et vous moulinez en permanence. Comment ça se passe avec Jean-Michel Aulas?
I think everybody can watch that interview and figure out where it is. I think that interview was quite duplicitous. I was very disappointed. I've been working on my relationship with Jean-Michel. We've agreed to put the past behind us. He gives an interview like that, and obviously he hasn't put the past behind us. Look, he said in the interview, I don't know much about football. I was kissing a pretty big trophy down in South America. Maybe I do know a bit about football. He says I'm not a manager of businesses, but I've built multiple multi-billion-dollar companies. He said I wasn't his first choice. Well, the guy who was his first choice couldn't prove funds in time to be a valid bidder, and he was bounced out of the process because he didn't have the money.
C'est la famille Gillette à Liverpool.
Yeah, and Jean-Michel himself had more than a year. I'm sure the majority holders of Lyon gave him every opportunity to buy the club before even starting the process that found me. In fact, Arctos, the group that bought a piece of PSG, was Jean-Michel's choice to buy Lyon with him before. They chose not to close. So I'm very disappointed with that interview.
Vous l'avez appelé?
I actually recorded felicitations, congratulations, a video that they played in the interview. I was congratulating him for winning at the French Football Federation. But no, I was disappointed in the interview because, we've spent a lot of time working together for the benefit of the club. And, this talk about, me not being his choice or not being a football guy or being a character and not a good manager, obviously it's not helpful. But, look, we're in Europa League. We're challenging for the league. I'm going to do my best to ask the French football authorities to even the playing field in following the laws of Europe so that we have a fair competition for all teams here. But I don't know. I'll sit down and talk to Jean-Michel and have a glass of wine about that interview, but I wish he would get over the past because I was invited to buy this club and I'm helping this club and I've returned it to Europa League and we're going to go to Champions League.
Pour terminer, John Textor, il y a une personne à Lyon dont on n'a pas parlé, Pierre Sage, l'entraîneur.
Ah oui.
Est-ce que c'est la meilleure idée que vous ayez eue depuis que vous êtes là, de lui avoir donné les rênes de l'équipe première?
C'est votre idée.
Et est-ce qu'il est là pour longtemps?
Well, he's going to be staying as long as he's winning, right? It's sports. It was a controversial decision. There's this thing that happens in sports. It's normal. The football department sees that, well, somebody is next. If you have a problem with a coach, you go look externally, you see who's available. That was a difficult moment, the middle of the season. Very difficult to convince somebody to come into that situation. So when the football department looked around for available interim coaches, there were a number of names that were on that list. Pierre Sage's name was not one of them. I fell in love with football at the academy level. I just think there are great minds in football, and they're at every level. I think coaching is not that complicated. I think players need a plan they can understand, that's well taught, that's well communicated, and I think that can come from any level. It takes a lot of courage for somebody to stand on the sideline with big players and deliver those same ideas and those same plans at this level. But if you believe somebody has the heart and the courage to be able to do that, there are many, many people that are smart enough, that are good communicators, that can be great leaders. And I met him at the academy, talked to him about football, said, shit, this guy's really smart and he's well liked. He's not Arthur George down at Botafogo, who's on the sideline and he's energetic and he's driving people. Pierre's a very different style, but it worked for us because we needed to calm down the toxicity in the locker room at the time. We needed to get people just focusing on the game plan. And his personality was right at the moment. And he can stay as long as he continues to be right in the chemistry. But so far, so good.
John, dernière question. Est-ce que on a une chance de revoir un jour Karim Benzema? Ballon d'or français, il n'y en a pas eu beaucoup, né à Lyon. Est-ce qu'on a une chance de le revoir sur le terrain ou même dans un autre rôle à l'Olympique Lyonnais?
I don't know this, but I think he knows I tried to get him last year. And I was on the phone with the CEO of his club in Saudi, and I hear the same rumors you hear that maybe he was unhappy there. And the economics of that are wild, right? Because Saudi paid so much for him. But, he knows he's welcome back on the pitch when he's ready. I don't care how old he is. He can show up in a wheelchair, like, with bad legs, bad feet. I'd still roll him out onto the pitch just to see what happens. But he's a big part of the family, on the pitch, off the pitch. He's always welcome back. I spent time with Juninho down in
Ouais.
Brazil.
Eh oui.
J'allais le demander. Et Juninho.
Yeah, he still looks good. I swear, if he wants to show up at Lyon tomorrow, he may not be able to run too well, but I'll put him outside the box with a free kick over anybody. So all these guys are welcome back.
Très bien, merci.
John, merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup pour cet échange. C'était intéressant. Je pense que c'est important que vous veniez parler comme ça, en longueur, nous exposer vos ambitions, qui vous êtes réellement. Et je pense et j'espère que votre image en France va changer. De toute façon, suite à cette interview, et puis de toute façon, quand on vient dans Rothen sans flamme, en général, on ressort grandi. Merci à vous, John.
Merci.